Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a highly detailed investment report and financial snapshot on MTAR Technologies, fresh off the back of their massive Q1FY27 results. Whether you're tracking their operational margins, their expansion into totally new global sectors, or trying to model out their future valuations, this explainer is going to lay out exactly what's driving their current momentum. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Q1 earnings explosion. Look at their financial health and margins, check out their record-breaking order book, the core sectors driving all this growth, their brand new frontier in data centers, and finally, CAPEX and future valuations. So, Section 1, the Q1 earnings explosion. And wow, it was a massive quarter. When I say massive, I mean numbers that genuinely force you to take a second look at the financial statements. Boom, plus 130.4%. That is the headline shock factor right there. That is MTR's year-over-year revenue jump for the first quarter. More than doubling your top-line revenue in a single year-over-year period, that is an extraordinary feat for a heavy engineering and manufacturing company. Now, what's really fascinating is how that revenue growth cascades down the income statement. Revenue went from about 156 crores to nearly 361 crores. But look at the operational efficiency. EBITDA didn't just double. It practically tripled, jumping nearly 200% to 85.1 crores. And profit after tax? Absolute rocket ship. PAT surged from just under 11 crores to over 50 crores. That's a 364.5% jump. They aren't just selling more, they are retaining vastly more profit from every single sale. Moving to Section 2, financial health and margins. This is all about hitting the guidance. Because look, raw growth is great, but as we know, sustainable valuation requires predictable, profitable execution. Right now, MTAR's EBITDA margin is sitting at a very healthy 23.6%, and the PAT margin is at 13.9%. What you really need to take away from this 23.6% EBITDA margin is that it represents management hitting the absolute bullseye. Their stated annual guidance is an EBITDA margin of 24%, give or take 100 basis points. So they're executing exactly within the parameters they promised the market, even while scaling revenues at over 130%. And they definitely aren't resting on those laurels. The managing director recently reaffirmed their fiscal year 27 guidance of around 80% revenue growth, boldly stating, "We are pretty confident to do better than the guidance." When leadership signals that an 80% growth target might actually be conservative, well, the market takes notice. So what exactly is powering this immense confidence? That brings us to Section 3, the engine behind it all, a record-breaking order book. In just this single quarter, MTAR secured a monumental 2,895.1 crore rupees worth of new orders. To put that into perspective, that one single quarter of inflow surpasses their entire total order inflow for the previous fiscal year. Breaking that down, clean energy is absolutely leading the charge here, with fuel cells at roughly 67% and civil nuclear power at 13%. They are capturing massive demand in global energy transitions. Let's see how this builds their overall backlog. Their total closing order book for Q1 hit 5,143.3 crores. What is wild about this is that their stated expectation was to hit a 5,000 crore order book by the end of the entire fiscal year. They beat their year-end target by June. Plus, the MD casually noted they received an additional 800 crores in orders right after the quarter closed. Visibility here is arguably the strongest it has ever been. Section 4, core sectors driving growth, from aerospace to clean energy. Let's step back from the raw financials for a moment to understand the real-world applications of these dense metrics. What exactly are they building? And this brilliantly illustrates their high-barrier, deeply diversified portfolio. On one side, you have aerospace and defense. We're talking components for fighter jets, space launch vehicles. High-precision engineering where failure is simply not an option. On the other side, clean energy, including massive civil nuclear installations. These aren't simple widgets. They are supplying mission-critical import-substitute products to sectors with incredibly high barriers to entry, which inherently protects their margins. Looking at their directional medium-term ambitions, the scale-up is incredibly aggressive. Management sees aerospace tracking towards 600 to 700 crores, and the product sector aiming for more than 1,000 crores. In fact, they expect to double their aerospace and defense revenues just within this current fiscal year. A key driver of this customer confidence is their rapid creation of a dedicated NADCAP-approved special processes facility. It proves to global buyers that they can meet the most stringent standards required for these sectors. All right, Section 5, the data center frontier, the horizon. This is where the story pivots from an excellent traditional manufacturing narrative to something even more compelling. MTR is officially entering the global data center infrastructure space. If you've been following global markets, you know data center infrastructure is an incredibly high-growth narrative right now, driven by cloud computing and AI. MTR has successfully qualified to provide infrastructure solutions here, entirely distinct from their traditional aerospace or nuclear sectors. So why does this matter? Because this isn't just a one-off prototype. This is a highly scalable export program. They currently have an order of about 45 crores to be executed by the fourth quarter of this fiscal year. But here's the kicker. The customer has signaled a potential requirement of 8 times this current capacity, year on year. MTR is so confident in this visibility that they are setting up a dedicated facility specifically for these data center exports. It's a massive new growth lever. Finally, Section 6, CAPEX and future valuations. Let's synthesize all these fundamentals. Let's bring it all together. We have the growth, the margins, and the new sectors. Now, let's synthesize their capital expenditure, debt, and balance sheet to give you the building blocks for valuation. First, look at their operational liquidity. Working capital days have drastically improved, dropping to just 59 days this quarter. That is phenomenal, especially considering the CFO's target was simply to keep it under 100 days for the year. But look at the debt profile. Yes, they show gross debt of roughly 424 crores, but they are holding 379 crores in investments in cash. So the crucial point is captured perfectly by the CFO right here. Literally, there is no debt except some 20 to 30 crores once you net out those investments. Think about that for a second. They are funding over 130% revenue growth and scaling multiple greenfield facilities, all while maintaining an essentially debt-free net balance sheet. That drastically reduces financial risk and massively enhances their enterprise value. And they are very disciplined with their cash. To ensure they have the physical capacity to meet this explosive demand, they've laid out a roughly 500 crore CAPEX roadmap across FY27 and FY28. They've already incurred 35 crores in Q1 and capitalized 80 crores from previous work in progress. The spending is smart, with a roughly 70-30 split between clean energy and their other sectors, ensuring all growth engines have the fuel they need. Which leaves us with the ultimate question for you to ponder. When you have a company exhibiting 130% top-line growth, maintaining a virtually debt-free net balance sheet, sitting on a backlog of over 5,100 crores, and spinning up a highly scalable export vertical in global data centers, how do you model that future valuation? The fundamentals we've explored today suggest a company transforming from a niche manufacturer into a global infrastructure powerhouse. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this helps you build out your own models. See you next time.